Hey, it's Scott Petrak with another episode of the Browns Zone Coverage Podcast. And for the first time, we will discuss a season opening win for the Browns after a thrilling, closer than it needed to be, 26-24 road victory over the Carolina Panthers. Here, as always, to discuss is Dave Chudowsky of the WKYC Morning News. Chud, how are you?
Oh my gosh, Scott, what a game. It just feels good. First time since 2004, the Browns win a season opener, and it was much longer since they've done it on the road. I have that. You have that year handy? I got it somewhere
1994.
here. It's like
94.
1994 on the road. So, I mean, you're talking about historic stuff there.
Yeah.
And I'll just say it's just great to know that all week long you can think about tailgating now as a Browns fan and the chance to have 2-0 instead of that dreaded, if they start 0-2, then they could be 0-3 and then this and that. You know the drill. And
Yeah.
it feels good. What's crazy about the game is that, it went from feeling like, hey, they should win by a couple touchdowns and you felt really good. Like you felt like the Browns had it in hand to they might lose this game, and you could almost argue they should have lost it, but they should have won by way more. It's just bizarre, and it just shows you Vegas had it as 1.5, 2.5, finally a pick 'em. It just shows you how Vegas is right on. The two teams were neck and neck, and it ends up a 2-point game. And really, let's be honest, either team at the end could have won. A kick gets made and one team wins, and if he misses, the other team wins.
Right.
And we both you start 1-0, I start 0-1. I don't feel terrible about my pick because I said, hey, show me you can do it, and they did. And now I have more faith in the Browns, and they're 1-0.
Yeah, you never bet against Vegas, obviously. I don't know how they get it right, but they get it right so many times. My lasting impression, Chud, is, well, first of all, you're right about all that. Second of all, it's a reminder, not that we needed it, that the margins are so thin in the NFL, especially if you don't have an elite quarterback, right? Like Patrick Mahomes went in and he played great, and the Chiefs rolled Arizona. So that's one way to do it. If you don't have that elite quarterback, it's really hard to blow teams out in this league. It just is. But then my other takeaway is the defense I thought played really well, except for 3 plays. But those 3 plays are big enough to eliminate the cushion that the Browns had built up, right? They were up 23-14 with 6.5 minutes left. The offense, the passing game, the run game was great. The passing game was, I don't know, I was struggling to find the right word. I wound up going uninspiring in the story I wrote yesterday. I almost put borderline pitiful. The passing game was rough, and a lot of that has to do with Jacoby Brissett at the quarterback, and we'll talk about that. But despite that, it was able to make a couple of big plays on that final drive, right? Jacoby Brissett hit Donovan Peoples-Jones for a 13-yarder, and he was going to get hit off the blind side and stood in and made a big throw. Got Amari Cooper for 9 yards to set up the 58-yarder. It was get to the 40, and that 9-yarder got him to the 40. So, you kind of look at both the goods and bads from both sides. But when I take a step back, it's the Browns should have won this game easier. Like, that's how I felt sitting in the press box is they controlled it, right? They harassed Baker Mayfield for most of the game. Yes, Baker, had the 1 touchdown drive in the fourth quarter and then threw the 75-yarder, which the Browns busted a coverage. But the Browns really confused and harassed, and I thought dominated Carolina's offense. And I thought the Browns' run game was good enough. Their kicking game was good enough that it really shouldn't have come down to needing a 58-yarder. But your point was that the Browns made enough mistakes on defense to create that situation. And that's what's frustrating. It also shows you why you can't have any letdowns, because that margin in this league is so thin. So when, at the end of the first half, they let the tight end, Ian Thomas, just run down the left seam for a 50-yarder to the 2-yard line, that can't happen. That's like 7 easy points. And
those are the things they need to figure out how to eliminate, because we've seen it so much in the past.
Correct. We saw it a bunch early last year, right? And, we'll talk to Joe Woods, the coordinator, later in the week. Denzel Ward said yesterday to get it corrected. It's a miscommunication thing. And obviously it was, because from my seat in the press box on that 75-yarder, the Robbie Anderson one that really changed all that momentum in the fourth quarter, I'm watching it, and as he's running by Denzel Ward's like motioning, like he already knew it was done. Like you could tell he knew something was gone wrong. I thought he was upset, like he wanted an offensive pass interference. But I asked him after the game. He said, "No, that's not it. It was a communication thing." And I don't know if he was trying to pass it off to Delpit, or I think more likely was that was the signal for we had a coverage and you missed the coverage we were supposed to have, whether it was Grant Delpit or John Johnson the third. Those three guys are all in play over there. But you just can't have that, especially at that point in the game, right? The Browns get a stop there, the game's over. Instead, or they make them drive down, take up 4 minutes, right? Then it's 2 minutes left. You might see an onside kick. Like everything changes, but all of a sudden it goes from 9 points to 2 points, and there's still 6+ minutes left. All Carolina had to do was get one stop, and they got it, and then they took the lead, right? And then obviously they left too much time on the clock. But the point is, you just can't let that happen. And if you want to be this dominant top 5 defense, it can't be 50 of 53 snaps or whatever it is. I don't know if it's 50 snaps the Browns played on defense or 53. But I would say that they played really well for all but 3 of those snaps. And even really the third one, it was 53 snaps. The third one was kind of a fluky play where Baker dropped a snap, McCaffrey picked it up and went for 28 yards. If you take those 3 plays, the 75, the 50, and the 28 away, the Browns let up like 108 yards total. So there's plenty of reason to be optimistic, and it's a lot easier to do that when you look at it from the lens of a win, right? If the Browns had lost, they'd still be saying the same thing about how they played really good defense, but it wouldn't have mattered because when it came down to it, they did let up 17 points in the fourth quarter, right? Which is way too much.
Yeah.
So it was a crazy game, and I can't believe we've gone this far without saying Cade York. The name Cade York makes it all worthwhile, right? Makes a 58-yarder, and when you contrast it to Monday night, the Broncos settle for a 64-yarder, and the guy misses it. McManus misses it, and obviously situations were a lot different. They let the clock run out. The Browns only had a few seconds left and it was 4th down, right, when they kicked the field goal. But the goal was to get to the 40, and they got there, and then the kid was so clutch to win that game in his first NFL game.
We'll get back to York, and I also want to get back to Jacoby Brissett because I want to talk about some things you said about him. But before I forget, I do want to say, if we were breaking down the Panthers, I would be critical of them for multiple reasons. Number one, I understand, playing for the field goal because that's all they needed to win the game, and they got the field goal. But imagine if they would have missed the field goal. It's annoying to me as I was watching that. I'm like, if I'm a Panthers fan, get in the end zone, score a touchdown. They left too much time on the clock, and also you score a touchdown and you force the Browns to then have to score a touchdown instead of a field goal. I just didn't like that. And then also when they went on defense, you can't have a roughing the passer like that. That totally bailed the Browns out.
Oh, for sure. And, Matt Rule, who's, clearly on the hot seat down there in year 3, and I think he went 5-12 in his first 5-11 and 5-12 in his first 2 years. He blamed it was first down from, I want to say the 11 or the 16 on that where they settled for the field goal. And I think Baker dropped another snap, which he had 4 fumbles. And a lot of those were snap issues. And he had to fall on it. I'm looking at the play-by-play now. But 1st and 10 from the 14. Fumbled snap. They recovered at the 15. So instead of 2nd and whatever, it's 2nd and 11. And Matt Rule kind of shut it down from there. Called an RPO on 3rd down, and they wound up handing it off. So, I get that you don't want a turnover there. And he would blame the bad play on 1st down for kind of putting them in a tough spot. But you're right. You need a touchdown because a field goal, if the team needs a touchdown and has no timeouts or limited timeouts, everything is different. All you got to do is get like one big play on defense, and it's really hard to score. When you only need to get to the 40 and you start at the 25, right, that's 35 yards. That's not a lot, and the Browns had a minute plus. So you're 100% right. I think Rule and his offensive staff did a terrible job getting Christian McCaffrey involved. He's their best player, right? And not nearly enough touches. I'm looking up right now. I got it in front of me. He had 10 rushes for 33 yards and 28 No, they call that a border play. So 10 for 33, and then 4 catches for 24 yards, right? Like that's not enough touches. 14 touches for the best player on your team who's healthy. So, and then your final point about the roughing the passer, and I know Carolina complained about it, and Rule said he didn't get a good explanation, but the ref talked to a pool reporter. There was contact to the head, and it wasn't. They changed the rule now where, like, if your hand follows through and kind of glances off the quarterback's head, it's not supposed to be a roughing call. To me, this was helmet to helmet, and that's still a roughing call. Yeah, he was getting blocked, but he went over and above, and I thought helmets connected. So I thought it was a legitimate call, but it was a huge play in the game and in that drive because all of a sudden you're at the 40-yard line, and now you only need 20 yards. So, yeah, all those Carolina mistakes were huge.
Well, I'll say this about Jacoby Brissett. You got to give him credit for this. You know, he didn't lose the game, and he managed it pretty well. The time of possession was incredible. Obviously, the Browns' running game, is the reason for that. But at the end of the drive, he made some nice passes, and he didn't turn the ball over. He didn't throw a terrible interception at that point in the game that ruins it for you. I mean, granted, listen, he didn't wow you, but he didn't lose the game and put him in a position to win, right?
Yeah, and that's certainly part of what the Browns like about him and what was attractive to them when they went out and signed him. And I think the fact that the Browns coaches spent so much time talking about his decision-making is a contrast to how they felt about Baker Mayfield, who made too many mistakes when he was with the Browns quarterback, and he made a big one with the interception Sunday that led to the Cleveland's first touchdown. So the coaches love that, right? It's so much easier to coach when you trust your quarterback's not going to make the game-breaking mistake. Now, he needs to play better. He needs to make more plays. But yes, the fact that he didn't turn the ball over is big. The fact that he made 2 big plays, 2 big throws on that winning drive is big. So yeah, I think there's certainly something to be said for that. But he goes 18 for 34, 147, 1 touchdown, a sack, 74.0 rating. When you play better teams and better quarterbacks, Brissett's going to need to do more than that. But I think if you're looking at the optimistic side, there were chances there. Like this formula, and it's not a secret formula. We knew what the formula was going to be. You run the ball a bunch, you get the ball to Chubb and Hunt as much as you can, and then you get your quarterback and your receivers to make a certain amount of plays in the game, and your defense plays great, and your kicker makes all his kicks. Like, that's a formula to win, and it's not like the Browns invented this formula, but that's their formula without Deshaun Watson. And I think you saw that formula can work. Now, where it can go to the next level, so you're not just beating the Carolinas of the world and maybe not relying on a 58-yard field goal with 8 seconds left, is Brissett makes more throws earlier in the game. And they gave him chances, and he missed them. And I'm rewatching the game now, and it was a 3rd and 3 on their first drive, and Amari Cooper wins on this route, and he beats, I think it was J.C. Horn at corner. And Brissett, instead of zipping it to him as soon as because he was open right away, and he hits him, and it's a first down, and they go down, and they probably score a touchdown. He lost it, so Cooper's trying to run it down on the sideline. It gives the safety time to get over, and the safety gets there. I think the pass is still a little bit long, and the safety gets there. Like, that's a missed opportunity. The next drive, they had Kareem Hunt in a similar situation on the left side. He beats the linebacker and is open, and Brissett overthrows him. So if you hit those plays, or even one of them, right, your stats get better, you got an early touchdown, you have momentum. Like, those are the kind of plays that if he makes, it takes this offense to a next level. And I think even though he didn't make them, there are examples of, okay, this is how the Browns can have some explosive plays to the pass game to balance what they do in the run game. And even that, you could probably include it, and it doesn't go on anybody's stats, but the big pass interference where Cooper gets tackled in the end zone. And it set up the 1-yard touchdown to Hunt on the next play. That's a well-designed play. They roll right. It's heavy play action. Brissett plants and throws back left, and Cooper's wide open, and the ball hangs in the air, but the defensive back was so out of position that he runs, he tackles Cooper. but that's a play where maybe Jacoby's got to throw it on a line, maybe he's got to set his feet quick or whatever. But that's another play, and it turned into an explosive play just because it doesn't show up in the stats, where it set up a touchdown because you have an explosive play in the pass game when it's a run situation and you can use that heavy play action. So I do think there's positives there. But I wanted to ask you this, Chud. I want to talk about this. Jacoby Brissett's post-game press conference, the news conference, he was really emotional. What did you think about that?
He was. Yeah. What was that from just how crazy the offseason's been and everything, from Deshaun Watson on down? Is it just, taking advantage of an opportunity and, people consider him a backup and is there more to that? Is it just the emotions of, hey, there's not many starting QBs in the NFL and, he took advantage of his opportunity.
Yeah, I think that was it. And I had sat down with him about a week and a half earlier, and he stressed to me how important it was to get this chance to start. And that's why he signed with the Browns, because he knew he'd get a chance to start games. He didn't know how long Deshaun Watson would be suspended, but he knew he assumed there'd be a suspension like all of us did. And that's why he chose to come here. I kind of phrased the question almost in a, hey, this is a tough situation. And he said, no. He goes, I wanted this situation. And it's all about that chance to start. And again, we saw with Geno Smith last night on Monday night, right? Geno Smith gets a chance and takes advantage of it, and it means so much to him because he's later in his career. Jacoby's 29. So yeah, it was all about what this opportunity meant to him. And Jacoby Brissett said that that's why he thinks he played poorly at the beginning. He had a hard time dealing with all those emotions, which is to me really interesting, and it's a really human moment. And I liked hearing him say that. And then I kind of followed up and I said, is that because of the opportunity like we talked about? And he said, yeah. And then he got choked up again. And then there's another follow-up, and he answered the question and kind of left. Like that was the last question. So there were like 3 times where he got emotional during the news conference. And I really appreciated the humanity of it. Now he just needs to figure out a way to deal with it better at the start of games. And I'm sure he will. I mean, he started almost 40 games in the league. So I think week 2 at home, he'll settle down. But I thought that was really interesting, and I thought it was a nice kind of insight into how he was thinking.
Yeah, in order to beat better teams, he's going to have to do more. That's for sure. And I will say, and this can be a criticism of me or us or the media in general. Had that kick not gone in, we'd probably be sitting here saying how he needed to do more, and he maybe let the Browns down because he wasn't able to do more. I don't know. I mean, but I guess at the end of the day, my point is that he didn't throw a pick 6. He didn't turn over the ball in the wrong spot. Let me ask you this, and I tweeted this. I took a little flack from your supporter. I'm trying to be critical or rude to Baker here and I don't want to jump into this whole conversation because you have done this for over a year, and it But the bottom line is this: I do not like this. I do not at the point. But as I was watching the other day, I found ironic, and don't be wrong here because this is just how I viewed it. It was crazy to me that a guy could not find to win the game under 2 minutes for the Browns in his career. Right? He just never could get it done. Almost did it. And frankly, he did do it. He brought his team back and actually took the lead. And it was ironic to me that
Yeah, Chud, you were breaking up a little bit there, but I get exactly what you're saying. You're talking about Baker and 0-5 last year, right when he had a chance to lead, go-ahead drives in the fourth quarter, and then he does it Sunday against the Browns, right? He succeeds. He doesn't get to win, but he succeeds in that moment, in those final minutes, putting his team ahead in the final moments. And I think that's why it would have been such a gut punch to the Browns if they had gone on to lose that game, right? If that Pinheiro field goal winds up being the winner and Baker gets to ride off and celebrate that win and leading the comeback, which is one of the reasons the Browns gave up on him, because he was 0-5 last year, right, with late chances to lead the go-ahead drive, and he couldn't do it, and then he does it in his first chance with Carolina. That would have been devastating for the Browns fan base for sure, and I would think a large segment of the Browns organization and the Browns locker room. But yeah, so that certainly was interesting. I thought Baker showed the fight, which we knew he had, right? There was never any question how
Yeah.
hard Baker fights. You saw him win. I mean, the fact that he played better in the fourth quarter, I thought was good for him, right? That's like, I thought he took a step, and I thought he gave Panthers fans and Panthers organization kind of like the opposite of the Browns. I think he gave them some hope with how he played in the fourth quarter, because you wouldn't have had any hope. If you're Carolina watching how Baker played early, you wouldn't have had any hope. But to see him fight and see him make a couple plays in the fourth quarter, the scrambling touchdown, the 75-yarder, leads that field goal drive, at least you can go into the rest to week 2 and say, okay, this guy's got a chance to lead us. And I think you were trying to get this, like I said, you're breaking up a little bit, but I think part of your point was he looked a lot of like what we saw from Baker in his 4 years here, right? Inconsistent, bad at passes, bad interception, struggles to see, right? Has to move, has to get out of the pocket. And the Browns knew how to defend him, and they did a good job, except for, a couple of the plays like we talked about. So to me, it was, hey, this is Baker. This is who Baker is. This is why the Browns felt Baker wasn't good enough to take them where they want to go.
Yeah, I guess my point, and I don't know how much it broke up. It was just crazy to me that what he couldn't pull off for the Browns, he almost did it against us, and then another guy actually. And granted, it was York's field goal, and we didn't have a kicker like that in the past, but still, it was just ironic to me as I was watching it that Jacoby Brissett, he doesn't get all the credit for that last drive, but he definitely deserves as the quarterback a lot of it, and he was able to do it. We just haven't. Listen, when Carolina made that field goal, Scott, and tell me you weren't thinking. I mean, did you think they were going to come down and win the game? I mean, we unfortunately have seen the script so many times.
No, I mean, you didn't, because you needed a bunch of stuff to go right. No, I didn't. I didn't think there was no chance.
Right.
But when McCaffrey, I think it was a screen pass, McCaffrey goes for however many yards, and then John Johnson III gets a horse collar. All of a sudden, it's a guaranteed field goal for the Panthers, and it certainly looks like a loss, right? And then the Browns defense gets that stop. They settle for the field goal, whatever. But yeah, that's when you said, "Oh my gosh, they're really going to lose this game." And Baker's going to beat them, right? Like all those things. Like it's the worst possible scenario. To me, it felt like it was going to be, and the Browns have had a billion things go wrong in openers. But the key one, right, is that Dwayne Rudd helmet toss. And like that's where my mind flashed back to is you had a win and it got snatched away. And this would have felt, I think, on that same level because of all the circumstances and because of Baker Mayfield. But I'm glad you brought up Jacoby. Yes, Jacoby now is 1-0. Not only is he 1-0, he's 1 for 1 with the chance to lead a game-winning drive. And that's significant. That's how we measure quarterbacks in this league. He got help on the roughing call. He got help with the 50-yard field goal. He still did what he needed to do. And you can contrast that with other quarterbacks. You can contrast it with Baker from last year. I keep going back to Monday night because it's so fresh. You can contrast it with Russell Wilson. Now, his coach had a lot to do with taking the ball out of Russell Wilson's hands, but he didn't get his team far enough to win that game yesterday. So, yeah, I think it is important, and I'm going to try to work on an analysis today. We'll see how it comes together. But about Brissett and how he can go forward and how this can be a building block, even with stats that aren't great. And before we leave Brissett, just real quick, Chud, were you worried? I mean, Browns fans, I'm sure, were worried. When he had like the double clutch spike before the field goal, right?
I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah.
I mean, I'm watching it, and I think I know the rules pretty well, and I was like, I'm not sure you're allowed to do that. And then the flag comes out, and it's a crazy scene in the press box. Everybody's trying to write their story, and it's a win, is it a loss? You're watching the game, you look at a computer, you're tweeting, whatever. And I'm like, I think they're going to call intentional grounding. And all this, right? And then that takes it to 68-yard field goal, 10-second runoff because they're trying to close the clock. So you have to run on the field, hurry up and snap it in the final 3 seconds and kick a 68-yarder. And as good as Cade York is, that's a big ask, right? They might not even gone for it. They might have tried to throw a Hail Mary. But you have no time. You can't spike it because it's 4th down because it's a loss of down. So it would have been a rush regardless. I wouldn't have confidence in a Hail Mary or a 68-yard field goal. So there probably goes from a win to a loss because the official decided that it wasn't. I think it wasn't deliberate, right? Because you've seen quarterbacks fake the spike and then pull it back, and they don't want that to be allowed. Like they can't. You're supposed to just spike it. And Matt Rule talked about you have to be within like a yard of the line of scrimmage, and Brissett was drifting back. Now I don't think there was anything nefarious from Brissett. I just think like the ball stuck in his hand or whatever. He just double clutched and then he fired it in the ground. And the officials said no, it's not a penalty, and they picked it up. But that was another thing that the Panthers were upset about, and I get that. Like I get the flag flew. Right, so there's certainly a question about whether it was a call in the official's mind. But here's what the quote from the official was: "After discussion, we determined that stepping back does not disqualify the quarterback from spiking the ball, and we allowed him to do that by rule." But I think there is some gray area there. So again, it's just that margin of error and how you view everything so differently through the prism of victory or defeat in this league.
Yeah. Well, I understand the stepping back part, but doesn't the rule say you can't pump fake like that and then spike it?
Yeah,
or is that not the case?
I read the rule, and I don't think it is as descriptive about that. I'm not sure it eliminates the pump fake factor. I think there is some intent involved. Like you can't try to deceive the defense and then spike the ball on the ground. So and this is just my perception, is that I think the officials ruled that he wasn't trying to like fake and then see what the defense did. There was just like a mechanical problem. Like he just didn't fire the ball on the ground the first time for whatever reason that was. And they kind of let him slide. But obviously the Browns knew it was a little funky because Jacoby Brissett said he didn't know if he did something wrong. And Stefanski said, "Hey, we're good with whatever the refs called." So it wasn't like, "Hey, he didn't do anything wrong." You know, that what they didn't have like a great defense for it. It was like, man, we got a little lucky here.
Yeah, no doubt. You want to do a little rapid fire before we talk Jets and get into the future here? So keep you honest here, because I mean we can talk forever on these things.
Right.
But number one, rapid fire, man. It seemed like the D line just playing volleyball, swatting Baker Mayfield.
Yeah, I mean I counted 5 deflections or tips at the line or near the line. Clowney started it right away on the first play. Baker tried to throw that quick out, and Clowney batted it away. The Browns knew that they could affect Baker that way. It was fresh in the mind from that game, that Monday night game, his last game in Cleveland. Pittsburgh did the same thing to him, and the Browns did it. And on top of that, Myles Garrett was able to get around that rookie left tackle twice back-to-back and get 2 big sacks, including a strip sack. And, it's a good start for Garrett. Obviously, they paid a lot of attention to try to stop him, but he was able to get through more than twice.
Yeah, I let you go along because Garrett was the next one in rapid fire. Those sacks had to feel good, right? Yeah. And then did you see the video at the end, Baker and him on the field? Did you see that encounter?
Real quick kind of hug. Yeah, I mean, Myles Garrett has not been shy about saying that their relationship was strained, and he used it as motivation. He didn't like the off the leash T-shirt and brought that up after the game. Like, there's some issues there. And it's interesting because he said, "Hey, I never had a problem with Baker on the field. He was a tough competitor." So it was kind of like an off the field. They just didn't really connect, which is interesting. And they were able to put those problems aside for a while. 2020, they led the team to the playoffs, but it wasn't going to be a long-term fit with those guys. And I think Myles made that clear, and I'm sure it felt great to him to get those 2 sacks and a couple other hits on Baker.
Cade York, too early to really know, but I mean, Scott, is this the real deal? I mean, was drafting a kicker the right move? Is this just? Are we going to continue to see more of this from this guy?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen anything in training camp, the preseason, or week 1 to make me think differently. And a lot of that's about his attitude, Chud. He's just really confident in himself, and that goes a long way. And not every kicker's like that. Kickers have big legs, but they get down on themselves. They get shaken. I think it's important to note that he had a bad warm-up. Like, I was watching, right? Because now that's the thing to do is watch how far Cade York kicks in pregame. and he missed 4 in a row. Like he tried 4 in a row from 50 plus and missed them. And then they moved shorter so he could make one. And I was like, man, that's a bad sign before the opener, right? And that's part of the reason. Well, I think the Browns had this plan altogether. Kevin Stefanski said he wanted Cade York to see a ball go through the uprights before he tested him with a long kick, which is why they had a chance to kick a 54-yarder on their first drive, and they went for it. And he said, that's exactly why we went for it, is because I wanted him to make one first. And that paid off because not only is he a rookie and you want to get his feet wet, he did have a tough warm-up. So by the time he gets to the 58-yarder to win the game, he'd made 2 extra points and 3 other short field goals. And he felt good. He had that in-game confidence built up. So I think that was a good move by Stefanski and special teams coordinator Mike Prefer.
Yeah.
And I think it says it's good about York for being able to move past a rough warm-up.
Yeah, 58-yard field goal, the longest made field goal by a rookie in their team's first game of the season in NFL history.
Yeah.
And also think about this, and I don't know if you mentioned this already, I can't remember because there's so many nuggets right now. 58 yards, second longest made field goal in Browns history, only Steve Cox. And I remember that in 1984, 60 yards. I remember that, but it's crazy, man, to think that, you need the second longest field goal in Browns history to get that win. Got to talk about real quick Kareem Hunt. I mean, boy, watching him, it just reminds you like what a 1-2 punch that is, and why it's great to have Kareem Hunt on your team.
Yeah, and we saw Chubb and Hunt together on the field more than we usually do, a lot more than we usually do. I counted 8 snaps, all in the first half, starting with the second snap of the game. And I think that just gives defenses one more really big thing to think about. Another worry, another thing to game plan against. And you saw kind of Kareem do some of that pre-snap motion that the Browns used to do with Jarvis Landry. And I think that's interesting. You can throw it to him on swing passes if the defense doesn't go with him. If somebody is specifically designated to follow Kareem Hunt, you can run Chubb the other way because the defense is shifted to follow Hunt. So there's a lot you can do with it. And it paid off on that 1-yard touchdown to Hunt. Chubb was in the game, the touchdown pass. You play fake, handoff to Chubb up the middle. Hunt's wide open on the edge. So I liked that Kevin Stefanski went there. I think there's more to get out of that package of the two of them together on the field. Chubb had a huge game, ran great, jumped over guys. Wyatt Teller said he had a play where he jump cut about 15 times. 22 for 141, 6.4 average, 2 more rushes over 20 yards. Hunt had 11 for 46 rushing with the touchdown, the long touchdown, 24 yards, and he caught 4 passes for 24 and a touchdown. So, yeah, I mean, those are your 2 guys, right? That's where the bulk of your offense came from, and that's no surprise, and I'd expect to keep seeing that.
Mm-hmm. Did you see that Steelers-Bengals I don't know if you got a chance. I know you were down in Carolina, but on replay or highlights, man, that was a crazy one. The Steelers and Bengals.
I did. I saw the highlights. I mean, craziness, right? You got T.J. Watt. Now they don't think he's going to miss the whole season with that pec, but he's going to miss week 3 against the Browns, which is a huge break for the Browns. You saw Joe Burrow rally, but he turned the ball over a ton of times, right? And then you saw the kicking game.
Yeah.
And it wasn't necessarily the kicker. Like the Bengals are having long snapper issues.
Right.
Right. But that led to a blocked extra point that would have been the game winner. So craziness. But yeah, now, if the Browns you're talking about, it's obviously it's way down the road, division titles. The Bengals are going to be in the mix, right? The question is, will Pittsburgh be in the mix? But the fact that Pittsburgh won week 1 and gave Cincinnati a loss, it's huge in kind of the scope of the division.
Anything else before we move on to the Jets?
No, I checked off all my things on my list here, Chud.
Awesome. Hey, we've been doing this together for over 15 years. So, I mean, right?
Good point.
So,
good point.
Yep. All right. So right now we're recording this on Tuesday. The Browns are 6-point favorite. 1:00, first home game of the year. The fans are going to be jacked up after tailgating, and it's going to be quite the scene down there. You know, before we do prediction, you want to just, quickly break down the Jets?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't watched their opener. They lost to the Ravens. I think it was 24-9.
Yep.
But what has to be said is their quarterback is out. Zach Wilson, the number 2 overall pick a year ago. Big arm, big hopes for him. Good athlete. He's not playing. He had knee surgery in the preseason, so it looks like it's going to be Joe Flacco is the starting quarterback. Right, he's getting up there, closing in on 40. Browns know him well from all his time with the Ravens. Won the Super Bowl with the Ravens. The Jets fans are chanting for Mike White, the backup quarterback. We'll see if Robert Saleh, the coach, said Flacco's our quarterback for now. I'd kind of be surprised if they made such a quick switch, but so that's huge, right? You don't have your starting quarterback, and they're out. It looks like they're going to be out both their starting tackles. Dwayne Brown didn't play week 1. Mekhi Becton is out after a preseason injury. He's their other starter. He was a top 10 pick the same year Jed Wills was. So, they have a couple receivers, Elijah Moore, Garrett Wilson, out of Ohio State, right? Corey Davis is a former top pick. So they have some weapons, but, they got questions on the line and questions at quarterback. And then on defense, they do have Sauce Gardner, the corner that gets a lot of love. It'll be interesting to see how he does if he's matched up with Amari Cooper. Cooper only had 3 catches for 17 yards, did have that big pass interference that he drew. I would think the Browns would make more of a concerted effort to get him the ball, and we'll see if he is matched up against that rookie. But, you can take nobody for granted, and, we saw how the Browns almost lost a game against a team that I thought they should have won in week 1. But this certainly sets up as a game the Browns should win. Like you said, they're favored by a touchdown. It's at home. And again, they need to pile up these wins early because the schedule is going to get much harder. So this is a game you can't say they need to win a week 2 game. This is a game they should win, and this is a game they need to win.
Yeah, I don't think that's a stretch to say they need to win this. I mean, you got to win your home opener against a team like the Jets, and like you said, with the games they have afterwards and the uncertainty. With Brissett as your quarterback, I think it's definitely, it's not a must win, and maybe but yeah, you should need to win this game. So let's go with the predictions. I started last week. I'm 0-1. You're 1-0, and here we go. You get to go first.
All right. I mean, I don't think we can go into many of these games expecting high scoring games, right? I think the Browns Panthers got over the over under with those late points, but for a long time it looked like it was going to be under. So I just can't pick a high score. I'm going to go Browns 24-14. I think Brissett plays a little better. They're still able to run the ball, and the defense cleans up some stuff and really limits Joe Flacco and the Jets. And Flacco doesn't move, right? He never moved. Now he's older, so he moves less. With the questions at tackle, it could be a big day for Myles Garrett, Jadeveon Clowney. I'm sure the Jets will try to offset that by running the ball and screens and quick game. But if the Browns can get a lead, then that takes away those other options, and you got to drop back and throw the ball. So it could be a big game for Clowney and Garrett. So give me 24-14.
That is unbelievable. I wrote down my score before we started because last week, remember, you caught me off guard, and I shouldn't have been caught off guard. I mean, right, with the season record, I was kind of ready for my prediction. I wrote down and circled it on my paper here, 24-14 Browns. We have the exact same score.
Well, then everybody can know that won't be the score. So it'll be something besides 24-14.
Yeah. Maybe 23-13 instead of 3 touchdowns field goal.
I was just going to say that.
There'll be a couple extra field goals. Yeah. Oh, man. Yeah, listen, this is a game. You're a better team than the Jets. And you mentioned the score against the Ravens. They scored a touchdown late in that game. Okay. They only had 3 points until the very end. I didn't watch much of it. I saw a couple plays here and there, but it's it's hard for me to believe that the Jets offense can do enough against the Browns defense. I mean, they'll probably break a big play or something, kind of like Carolina did, maybe to get in the end zone. Obviously, we both have them getting in the end zone twice with 14, most likely. But yeah, I'm going Browns, and they start out the year 2-0.
Yeah, I'm with you on all that. It's weird, you try to get to these scores, right? And I was like 14. I was like, man, do the Browns give up 2 touchdowns to these guys? And obviously they could, but they could also give up 2 field goals and a touchdown and a 2-point conversion, right? Like there's another way to get there that kind of popped into my head. Like I don't love the 2 scores thing and the 2 touchdowns. Like the only time they score would be 2 touchdowns. Like I wasn't crazy comfortable about that, but I thought, no, you can get there a different way. Yeah, and you said they didn't score until the end against the Ravens. I think it was interesting. Saleh, who the Browns interviewed in one of these coaching searches. I don't know if there was a Stefanski search or the Freddie Kitchens search, but Saleh was I don't know if he's a finalist, but he interviewed for sure. And he's a likable guy. He's fiery. He said yesterday, he told Jets reporters that he's taking receipts. All the people that have discounted him, all the people discounting the Jets. So like there's some fire there, and I'm sure he'll have his guys ready to go. The question is, are they talented enough right now? Right? You don't have your quarterback, you don't have your tackles. It just feels like, yeah, they got the proper motivation. I'm sure they're a better team than they were a year ago. I'm just not sure week 2 they're ready to make those improvements. So I think the Browns are catching them at a good time.
Yeah. Last week I said, hey, this is a game that feels like it could go either way. And honestly, it almost did. So this is a game where, I kind of like looking at all the different levels. We both think it will be a 10-point game, right? That's what we think. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if the Browns won 30-7 or 30-10. That wouldn't shock me. At the same point, I wouldn't be surprised if they had a little bit of a letdown and snuck away with only a 3 or 6-point win, right?
Yeah.
So the things that would surprise me, a surprise would be the Jets winning, not a shock, but a surprise. The only thing that would shock me would be if the Jets just come in and like run the table and win by a couple touchdowns. That's kind of the way I look at this game.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, I'd be surprised. Yeah, I'd be surprised if the Browns lost. I wouldn't be stunned, right? We've seen them lose plenty of games. It happens in the league. Stuff happens from week 1 to week 2. But without having watched that whole Jets game yet, but knowing about the Jets and knowing how week 1 went for them, it just seems like a good opponent for the Browns. It feels like the Jets are going to have a hard time scoring points, and the Browns should be able to cobble enough together. So
yeah, those injuries have been bad for them. It definitely has hurt them. But I think the Jets' future is a lot better, though. I think they're going to be a better team at some point.
Right, that comes down to the quarterback, right?
Yep,
and I think they drafted. I think they drafted pretty well. They've had some bad injuries, like we talked about. So it'll be interesting. But yeah, it's a chance for the Browns to go 2-0, which obviously I got to look up the last time they went 2-0 because it couldn't have been before 2014 or 2004. And I think they might have lost week 2, 2004. So I'll have to look that up. But yeah, you start 2-0, you start to feel good about yourself. Then we got to quickly turn the page to a Thursday night visit from the Steelers in week 3, right? So that'll be to get on that quick. The focus will shift. Start talking about that game, and if you get an early division win, and the Steelers obviously surprised Cincinnati, so they're capable of a lot of things. Even every time people write the Steelers off, they come back and show you that that's a stupid thing to do. So we got some football to play in the next 10 games or 9 days, 7, 8, 9. So yeah, we have a lot of stuff to talk about coming up.
Sounds good. We'll do it.
Great. Chud, appreciate the time as always. Thank you everybody for listening. And you can always read all my stuff at brownzone.com. So this has been another episode of the Zone Coverage Podcast. Thanks everybody.